The question that started it all was simple enough. Did something appear at the Bayside Marketplace on the night of January 1st, 2024? For months, I had been digging into that specific date, that specific location. I had found enough evidence to form a view on that question, a view I was comfortable defending. But somewhere in the process, the ground shifted beneath me. The question changed. It wasn't just about whether something appeared anymore. It was about why the people responsible for the official response had acted the way they did. Why the silence? Why the rapid narrative management? Why the coordinated effort to make sure no one looked too closely? My name is Adrian Vega. I'm an investigative journalist, though lately I've felt more like an archaeologist of the present day, digging through layers of digital debris to find what's been buried. The Bayside incident began like most modern mysteries with a viral clip, a shaky phone video showing chaos in the open-air shopping center, screams, people running, police lights flashing against the palm trees, then nothing. The video was deleted. The accounts were suspended. The official statement came hours later, a routine security drill, a false alarm, a minor disturbance involving a few intoxicated individuals. Standard procedure. Case closed. But I knew better. I had spoken to witnesses. I had seen the raw footage before it vanished, and I had noticed the patterns. The first anomaly was the power grid. At 8:36 p.m. on January 1st, there was a significant spike in electromagnetic activity across downtown Miami. Not a blackout, but a surge. Engineers at the local utility company later described it as unusual but not unprecedented, attributing it to a transformer malfunction. But when I cross-referenced that timestamp with other data, the picture grew stranger. Cell phone signals in the immediate vicinity of Bayside failed simultaneously, not gradually but instantly. Calls dropped, texts failed to send, GPS units lost satellite lock. For exactly 14 minutes, the area was a dead zone. Then there were the radio malfunctions. Police scanners in the area reported heavy static and interference during that same window. Dispatchers struggled to communicate with officers on the ground. One officer's body cam footage, which leaked briefly before being scrubbed from the internet, showed him shouting into his radio, unable to get a response. "We have a situation at the Central Plaza," he yelled. Multiple subjects, non-human appearance, requesting backup. Then the feed cut to black. I spent weeks trying to verify that clip. Was it real, or was it a deepfake, a piece of disinformation designed to muddy the waters? I sent it to 3 independent forensic experts. All 3 confirmed it was authentic. No signs of digital manipulation. The audio matched the visual. The metadata pointed to a genuine device recording in real time. But the most compelling evidence came from the witnesses themselves. I interviewed 12 people who had been at Bayside that night. Their stories varied in detail, but the core elements were consistent. They described a sudden shift in atmosphere. The air grew heavy, charged with static. Birds fell silent. Then, a group of figures emerged from the shadows near the waterfront stage. "They weren't people," said Maria Gonzalez, a tourist from Colombia. "They were tall, too tall, and their skin, it was gray like stone. They moved differently, not like us, more like puppets, jerky, unnatural." Another witness, a local security guard named David Thorne, described them as shadows that had gained mass. He claimed they didn't speak, but emitted a low-frequency hum that made his teeth ache. "I felt sick," he told me. "Nauseous, like my brain was being scrambled. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't work. I just stood there watching them walk through the crowd. People were screaming, but they didn't react. They just kept walking towards the bay. Towards the bay, that detail repeated itself in nearly every account. The figures moved with purpose, ignoring the chaos around them, heading directly for the water's edge. Then, according to most witnesses, they simply vanished, not by running away, but by dissolving into the mist rising off the ocean. When I asked police officials about these accounts, I was met with stonewalling. No such incident occurred, a spokesperson told me. The event was a controlled exercise. Any claims to the contrary are baseless rumors spread by conspiracy theorists. But I had the data. I had the power grid logs. I had the radio transcripts. I had the body cam footage. And I had the witnesses. So why the denial? That's when I started looking into the broader context. The Bayside incident wasn't isolated. In the months leading up to January 1st, there had been similar reports across the country. A shopping mall in Ohio, a subway station in New York, a park in Seattle. Each time the pattern was the same: strange figures, electromagnetic anomalies, communication blackouts, and a swift, unified official denial. I began to map these incidents. When I overlaid them on a geological map, a pattern emerged. Each location sat above a specific type of rock formation, limestone karsts, often associated with underground cave systems and aquifers. More importantly, each location was near a major fault line or a zone of high seismic activity. Was there a connection between the Earth itself and these appearances? I reached out to Dr. Alina Rostova, a geophysicist who had studied electromagnetic anomalies in urban environments. She was hesitant to speak on the record, but agreed to meet me in a quiet cafe in Coral Gables. "You're talking about telluric currents," she said, stirring her coffee nervously. "Natural electrical currents that flow through the Earth's crust. Under certain conditions, solar storms, seismic shifts, even atmospheric pressure changes, these currents can spike. If the geometry of the rock is right, if there's a kind of natural lensing effect, those spikes can create localized electromagnetic fields strong enough to disrupt electronics." "And the figures?" I asked. Alina paused. "There's a theory, a fringe theory, that under extreme electromagnetic stress, the human brain can experience hallucinations, pareidolia. The mind tries to make sense of chaotic sensory input by projecting familiar shapes, humanoid figures, shadows, monsters. It's a defense mechanism." But she trailed off, looking uneasy. "But what?" "But some researchers believe it's not just hallucination. They believe that under specific conditions, these fields can interact with consciousness in ways we don't understand, that they can manifest physical effects, or that they can open doors." "Doors to where?" She shook her head. "I don't know, and I don't want to know. This is dangerous territory, Adrian. You're poking at things that powerful people want to keep hidden. The government has protocols for this. They call it anomalous event containment. It's not about protecting the public from monsters. It's about protecting the public from panic, from the breakdown of social order. If people believed that reality could glitch, that the world wasn't solid, that there were things living in the cracks, chaos would ensue, so they deny it. They gaslight the witnesses. They scrub the evidence. They maintain the illusion of stability." "Then you think that's what happened in Miami?" "I think," she said quietly, "that something happened. And I think the people in charge decided that the truth was too dangerous to share." I left the cafe feeling colder than the air conditioning warranted. Elena's words echoed in my mind. The illusion of stability. Was that what we were living in? A carefully constructed facade, maintained by force and deception, hiding a reality that was far stranger, far more fragile than we dared to admit. Over the next few weeks, I dug deeper into the concept of anomalous event containment. I found references to it in declassified military documents, in academic papers on crowd psychology, in the memoirs of former intelligence officials. It was a shadow infrastructure, a parallel system of response designed to handle events that didn't fit the normal categories of crime, disaster, or terrorism. Events that challenged the fundamental assumptions of reality. And the Bayside incident was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. As I pieced together the timeline, I realized that the response to the Miami event had been unusually sophisticated. The speed at which the videos were removed, the coordination between local police, federal agencies, and social media platforms, the consistency of the official narrative. This wasn't a reactive measure. It was a proactive strategy, a well-oiled machine designed to neutralize threats to the consensus reality. But who was pulling the levers? I started tracking the money, who funded the cleanup efforts, who paid for the PR firms that spun the story, who benefited from the silence. The trail led to a network of shell companies, private contractors, and government agencies with opaque budgets. Names like Project Blue Book II, the Alexandria Group, and the Sentinel Initiative appeared repeatedly. These weren't official designations. They were whispers, code names used by insiders to refer to the machinery of containment. I tried to reach out to someone within that network, a former analyst who had worked on one of these projects. He agreed to speak to me, but only via encrypted email. "We're not hiding monsters," he wrote. "We're hiding uncertainty. The human mind craves certainty. It needs to believe that the world is predictable, that cause leads to effect, that reality is solid. When that belief is shaken, people break. They become irrational, violent, unmanageable. Our job is to prevent that, to maintain the narrative, to ensure that the public continues to believe in the world as they've been taught to see it, even if that world is a lie." "No lie," I replied, "or just incomplete." "Incomplete is a luxury we can't afford," he responded. "Incomplete leads to questions. Questions lead to doubt. Doubt leads to chaos. We provide certainty, even if it's false, because false certainty is safer than true uncertainty." His words haunted me. Was he right? Was the lie necessary? Or was it a cowardly refusal to face the complexity of existence? I continued my investigation, but the walls were closing in. My sources dried up. My emails went unanswered. My phone calls were deflected. I started noticing cars parked outside my apartment, men in suits who didn't belong in my neighborhood. My computer began to act strangely. Files disappeared. Programs crashed. I was being watched, being warned. But I couldn't stop. Not because I believed I could expose the truth, but because I needed to understand it. I needed to know what lay beneath the surface of the world I thought I knew. So I kept digging. I compiled the evidence, the power logs, the radio transcripts, the witness statements, the financial trails. I created a dossier, a record of what happened in Miami and what it meant. And then on a rainy Tuesday night, I sat in my car on Biscayne Boulevard, watching the lights of the city reflect off the wet pavement. I had the dossier on the passenger seat. I had a choice to make: publish it and risk everything, or bury it and live with the silence. I looked out at the bay. The water was dark, choppy, hiding whatever secrets lay beneath. I thought about the witnesses, about Maria and David, about the figures that had walked into the mist and vanished. Were they still there, waiting, watching? I turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed to life. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew one thing: the question had changed. It wasn't about whether something appeared. It was about why we were so afraid to look. And as I drove away from the bay, leaving the lights of Bayside behind, I realized that the answer might be more terrifying than the question itself. They explained that my research had been deemed potentially harmful to ongoing aviation security measures, and that my findings were being classified under provisions of the Patriot Act. I was ordered to cease all investigation activities related to MH370, to avoid contact with media organizations, and to report any attempts by foreign agents to recruit me for intelligence purposes. The men were polite but clear about the consequences of non-compliance: prosecution under the Espionage Act, with penalties including life imprisonment. 3 days later, I found a small package in my mailbox. Inside was a single flash drive with a label written in block letters. 370 wasn't the first. The drive contained satellite images spanning the past decade, showing aircraft that had disappeared from civilian tracking systems in various regions around the world. Each image was time-stamped and tagged with coordinates that placed the aircraft at military facilities in remote locations, some in the Pacific, others in the Atlantic, several at installations I couldn't identify. But the most disturbing files on the drive were labeled with future dates. Satellite images that appeared to show aircraft that hadn't disappeared yet, positioned at facilities that were still under construction. The operation that had claimed Flight MH370 was not an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic program to disappear aircraft whenever strategic interest required it. Planes carrying inconvenient passengers, sensitive cargo, or simply flying routes that could serve as cover for military operations, all of them potential targets for Ghost Protocol deployment. As I write this, I don't know how long I have before the contents of that flash drive are discovered, or before my own disappearance becomes necessary to protect the secrets I've uncovered. But I know that the families of MH370's passengers deserve the truth, even if that truth is more terrible than the uncertainty they've endured for years. Flight MH370 didn't crash in the Indian Ocean. It was stolen by the most advanced intelligence apparatus in human history, using technology that makes aircraft vanish as completely as if they had never existed. The 239 people aboard that flight became collateral damage in an operation designed to test capabilities that will be used again whenever the strategic calculus demands it. This Southern Silence Corridor that swallowed MH370 is still active, still waiting for the next flight that carries passengers or cargo too valuable or too dangerous to reach its intended destination. In a world where aircraft can be made to disappear without leaving evidence, where debris can be manufactured and planted to support false narratives, and where military technology can override the basic assumption that commercial aviation operates in civilian-controlled airspace, every flight is potentially vulnerable. Every passenger is potentially expendable. The next time an aircraft vanishes without explanation, remember MH370. Remember that some disappearances are not accidents, but deliberate acts by organizations that operate beyond the reach of international law, public accountability, or human conscience. And remember that in the silence corridor, the truth is whatever serves the interests of those who control the technology to make planes disappear. The sky is no longer safe. It never was, but now at least you know why. Now settle in as we explore a conspiracy that may still be ticking beneath our feet. Dr. Ellis Warren, personal recording. Date, March 15, 1954. Location, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Static, then a nervous clearing of throat. My name is Dr. Ellis Warren. I'm recording this on my personal dictaphone because I don't know who else to tell. And if something happens to me, maybe someone will find these tapes someday and understand what we've done here. It started with a letter, not just any letter, one bearing the seal of the Atomic Energy Commission and signed by Edward Teller himself. The father of the hydrogen bomb wanted me, a nobody physicist from Berkeley who'd spent the last 3 years modeling thermonuclear yields in a basement laboratory that smelled perpetually of coffee and cigarette smoke. The letter was brief, almost cryptic. Dr. Warren, your work on temporal yield stabilization has come to our attention. We have a project that requires your particular expertise in chronological detonation mechanics. Report to Los Alamos, Site X9 on March 10, 1954. Bring no personal materials. Discuss this invitation with no one. E. Teller, Special Projects Division. Temporal yield stabilization. I'd never used that phrase in any of my published work. Yet somehow Teller knew about my private theories, calculations I'd kept locked in my desk drawer, mathematical models, exploring whether nuclear detonation could be triggered by astronomical events rather than simple electrical circuits. The drive to Los Alamos took 6 hours through the New Mexico desert. I'd been there before during the final months of the Manhattan Project, but Site X9 was different. It wasn't on any map I'd seen. The guard at the checkpoint wore no military insignia I recognized, and when I showed him my invitation, he simply nodded and waved me through to a road that descended directly into the mountainside. The facility was carved into living rock, a labyrinth of concrete corridors lit by harsh fluorescent bulbs that hummed constantly. My footsteps echoed as I followed painted yellow lines on the floor, past laboratories sealed behind thick glass windows, past rooms filled with equipment I couldn't identify. I found Teller in Conference Room 7, a windowless chamber dominated by a blackboard covered in equations I didn't immediately recognize. He was shorter than I'd expected, with wild Einstein-like hair and eyes that seemed to burn with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Dr. Warren," he said without looking up from the blackboard, "tell me, what do you know about cosmic timing?" "I'm not sure I understand the question, Dr. Teller." He turned to face me, chalk dust on his fingers. The universe operates on schedules we barely comprehend. Solar maximums every 11 years. Galactic alignments every 26,000. The Earth's magnetic field revering every few 100,000 years. What if we could harness those schedules? What if we could build a weapon that listened to the cosmos itself? I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. "You mean a bomb that detonates based on astronomical positioning?" Precisely. He smiled, but there was something unsettling about his expression. Imagine a weapon that requires no human intervention to activate. No codes, no keys, no possibility of being disarmed by enemy forces. A bomb that waits patiently for the universe itself to give the command. That's when the others entered the room. Ernest Lawrence, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who'd invented the cyclotron. Dr. Carl Fuchs, whose work on fusion containment had advanced far beyond anything publicly acknowledged. And briefly, almost ghost-like in his presence, John von Neumann, the mathematician whose computer models had made the hydrogen bomb possible. Von Neumann spoke only once during that first meeting, his Hungarian accent thick as he examined the equations on the blackboard. The calculations appear sound, Edward, but are you certain you want to wake this particular sleeping giant? Teller's response chilled me to the bone. Some giants, John, are meant to sleep until the world is ready for them to wake. Project Sundial Classification, Eyes Only. Internal Memo, March 18, 1954. To Project Staff from E. Teller, Project Director. Ray, Operational Parameters. Gentlemen, our work here represents the next evolution in nuclear deterrence. While our colleagues develop bigger bombs and faster delivery systems, we are developing something far more sophisticated, inevitability. Sundial 1 will be our first prototype. The device incorporates a plutonium fusion core with approximately 5 megaton yield, but its true innovation lies in its temporal detonation system. Rather than conventional timers or radio triggers, Sundial utilizes ephemeris calculations, astronomical positioning data, to determine activation conditions. The theoretical advantages are significant. No electronic components that can be disabled by electromagnetic pulse. No communication systems that can be intercepted or jammed. No human operators who can be compromised or coerced. Activation occurs only when cosmic conditions align perfectly. Dr. Lawrence will oversee cyclotron particle feedback systems. Dr. Fuchs will handle containment and yield optimization. Dr. Warren will refine the temporal mechanics. Remember, this project does not exist. We are ghosts working with shadows. E. Teller. Dr. Ellis Warren, personal recording. Date, April 3, 1954. Location, Los Alamos, Site X9. Sound of papers rustling. Coffee cup being set down. I've been here 3 weeks now, and I'm starting to understand the true scope of what we're attempting. It's not just a bomb with an astronomical timer. It's something far more complex and terrifying. The device we're building doesn't just wait for cosmic alignments. It actively monitors them. The bomb contains a sophisticated array of sensors, radiation detectors that measure cosmic background fluctuations, gyroscopes that track Earth's rotational variations, even primitive computer systems that calculate solar wind intensity. But here's what keeps me awake at night. They're not programming it for any specific date in the near future. The computer models I've seen all center around the year 2026, specifically December 21st, 2026, the winter solstice, when solar maximum conditions align with what they're calling a galactic meridian crossing. I asked Teller why 2026, and his answer made my blood run cold. Because that's when the universe will be listening most carefully. Ernest Lawrence grows more uncomfortable each day. Yesterday, I found him in the cafeteria staring at his coffee with the look of a man who'd seen something he couldn't unsee. "Delis," he said when I sat down across from him, "do you ever think we're not building this weapon for our government?" "Oh, what do you mean?" "I mean who benefits from a bomb that won't go off for 70 years, not the politicians making decisions today, not the generals fighting today's wars." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "What if we're building this for someone, or something, else entirely?" I wanted to dismiss his paranoia, but I couldn't, because I'd noticed something strange in the computer models. The targeting data wasn't focused on Soviet cities or military installations. The blast radius calculation centered on coordinates in the American Southwest, specifically areas of high geological activity. When I mentioned this to Dr. Futch, he just smiled that enigmatic smile of his and said, "Some weapons aren't meant to destroy enemies, Dr. Warren. Some weapons are meant to reshape geography." Sundial test log, classification, beyond top secret. Date, May 15, 1954. Test subject, Sundial 1 prototype. Location, underground test chamber 12. Yield, 0.5 kilotons, reduced scale. Temporal trigger, lunar apogee plus solar flare activity above 2.5 x 10·4 watts per square meter. 1530, initialization complete. All sensors active. Device monitoring cosmic conditions. 1545, first anomaly. Radiation detectors registering background fluctuations not present in any previous tests. Dr. Warren suggests the device may be listening to signals beyond our current understanding. 1612, unexpected activation. Device armed itself spontaneously. Lunar conditions not yet optimal, but solar activity spiked unexpectedly. Emergency containment protocols engaged. 1613, detonation. Sundial 1 exploded ahead of calculated schedule. Blast contained, but yield was 2.3 kilotons, 460% above expected output. Post-test analysis. The device didn't wait for our programmed conditions. It appears to have detected astronomical factors we hadn't considered, possibly gravitational wave fluctuations or quantum field variations. Dr. Lawrence recommends discontinuing the project. Dr. Teller has ordered construction of Sundial 2. Note, test chamber will require 6 months decontamination. 3 technicians hospitalized with radiation sickness. Dr. Ellis Warren, personal recording. Date, June 8, 1954. Location, Los Alamos, Site X9. Heavy breathing. Sound of footsteps echoing in corridor. Something's wrong, fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. Sundial 2 failed 3 days ago, but not in the way we expected. The device didn't explode, it vanished. One moment it was secured in test chamber 15, monitored by a dozen sensors and 3 backup camera systems. The next moment, the chamber was empty except for a circular patch of fused sand where the bomb had been sitting. The official report claimed spontaneous atomic dissolution due to temporal feedback loops, but I was monitoring the cosmic sensors when it happened. In the seconds before Sundial 2 disappeared, every astronomical detector in the facility registered readings that shouldn't have been possible. Gravitational fluctuations equivalent to a stellar collision. Electromagnetic pulses that briefly overwhelmed our instruments. And strangest of all, our atomic clocks synchronized to within nanoseconds suddenly showed different times. For exactly 17 seconds, time itself seemed to fragment inside that test chamber. Teller was ecstatic. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked me, packing back and forth in front of the now empty chamber. "We've built a weapon that doesn't just use cosmic forces, it communicates with them. Sundial 2 didn't malfunction, it was recalled." "Recalled by whom?" I asked. "By when," he corrected. "The device has gone forward in time to its designated activation date. It's waiting for us in 2026. I think Edward Teller has lost his mind, but the terrifying possibility is that he might be right. Ernest Lawrence submitted his resignation yesterday. Before he left, he pulled me aside in the parking lot and whispered, "Ellis, if you have any sense left, you'll run. Whatever they're building with Sundial 3, it's not a weapon. It's a doorway, and some doors should never be opened." I should have listened to him. God help me, I should have run. Personal Journal, Dr. Ellis Warren. Date, July 20th, 1954. I found the shipping manifest today, hidden in Teller's office, filed under innocuous headings like geological survey equipment and seismic monitoring devices. But the weight specifications, the radiation shielding requirements, the special handling instructions, they all match Sundial 3. The bomb wasn't dismantled, it was deployed. According to the transportation log, Sundial 3 was moved on July 15th to coordinates 33, 3,758 degrees north, 105, 6,890 degrees west, deep in the Capitan Mountains of New Mexico. The installation team described it as a permanent monitoring station for long-term atmospheric research, but I've run those coordinates through topographical surveys. The location is 7,200 feet above sea level, accessible only by a single mountain road that conveniently washes out every winter. It's surrounded by iron-rich rock formations that would naturally shield electromagnetic signatures, and it's positioned at the exact center of a geological formation that, if subjected to significant seismic activity, would create a chain reaction affecting fault lines from Arizona to Texas. The activation date is still December 21st, 2026, solar maximum, winter solstice, and according to astronomical projections I've calculated and recalculated, the cosmic conditions on that date will be unlike anything seen in recorded history. I confronted Teller about this yesterday. His response terrifies me more than anything I witnessed during the Manhattan Project. "Zealous," he said, looking at me with those burning eyes. "What if the Cold War isn't the real war? What if everything we've done, every bomb we've built, every secret we've kept, is just preparation for something bigger? What if 2026 isn't when our weapon activates, but when we need it to activate?" "Need it for what?" "For when they come back." He wouldn't explain what he meant by they, but he handed me a folder containing astronomical data dating back to 1908, the year of the Tunguska event in Siberia. The year something exploded in the Russian wilderness with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs, flattening 80 million trees across 2,000 square kilometers, yet leaving no crater and no radioactive residue. The folder also contained reports of similar unexplained phenomena. The 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg, Germany, where witnesses described aerial battles in the sky. The 1897 airship wave across the United States, when thousands of people reported structured craft in the skies decades before human flight was achieved. The 1942 Battle of Los Angeles, when military forces fired upon unidentified aircraft that seemed impervious to anti-aircraft shells. Every 70 to 80 years, Teller said quietly, they come back to check on us, to see how we're progressing. 1908, then nothing until the 1940s when we started splitting atoms. Now they're interested again, and if my calculations are correct, 2026 will be their next scheduled visit. I asked him who they were, but he just smiled that unsettling smile and said, the same ones who taught us to split the atom in the first place. Dr. Ellis Warren, personal recording. Date, August 5, 1954. Location, unknown. Static and distortion throughout. Sound quality very poor. Frequent interruptions. Can't stay long. They're watching me now. Black sedans parked outside my apartment. Phone calls that disconnect when I answer. My mail is being opened and resealed. I tried to contact J. Edgar Hoover through a Berkeley colleague who has FBI connections. Managed to get a message through about sundial and the 2026 activation date. 3 days later, my security clearance was suspended pending psychological evaluation for paranoid ideation and conspiracy-focused delusions. The irony is suffocating. I'm being declared mentally unstable for reporting an actual conspiracy. But I've made copies of everything: documents, photographs, audio recordings, technical specifications. I've hidden them in multiple locations, including a safety deposit box in Santa Fe and a buried cache in the desert near Roswell. If something happens to me, maybe someday someone will piece together the truth. Sundial 3 is out there, buried in the Capitan Mountains, waiting for the universe to whisper the correct activation code. It's not a weapon designed to win a war. It's a weapon designed to prevent one, or maybe to start one that hasn't begun yet. I keep thinking about what Teller said. Some weapons aren't made to be used. They're made to be found. What if sundial isn't our weapon at all? What if we built it for someone else, something else? Long pause, sound of papers being shuffled. I've done the calculations again and again. December 21st, 2026, 9:16, Mountain Standard Time, when the winter solstice aligns with solar maximum conditions and a rare galactic meridian crossing. If my models are correct, the cosmic radiation flux at that moment will be sufficient to activate any astronomical trigger system within a 1,000-mile radius. But hear what terrifies me most. That date isn't randomly chosen. It appears in astronomical texts dating back centuries. Mayan calendars, Egyptian star charts, even medieval European manuscripts describe that exact date as significant, as if civilizations throughout history knew something was scheduled to happen on December 21st, 2026. What if we didn't invent sundial? What if we discovered it? Recording cuts to static. FBI internal memo. Classification, top secret. Date, August 12, 1954. To Director J. Edgar Hoover from Agent Marcus Cole, Los Alamos Liaison. Ray, Dr. Ellis Warren, Security Assessment. Sir, per your request, I have completed psychological evaluation of Dr. Ellis Warren regarding his recent allegations concerning Project Sundial and potential national security threats. Assessment: Dr. Warren exhibits classic symptoms of paranoid ideation combined with technical delusions of grandeur. His claims regarding cosmic weapons and astronomical triggers appear to be fantasy constructs designed to elevate his perceived importance within the scientific community. Recommendation: immediate termination of security clearance and reassignment to non-sensitive research positions. Dr. Warren poses no credible threat to national security, but should be monitored for potential public disclosure of classified information, even if distorted by his psychological condition. Note: Project Sundial has been confirmed as a theoretical research exercise only. No actual weapons were constructed or deployed. Dr. Edward Teller has provided written testimony that all Sundial materials were destroyed or declassified as of July 30th, 1954. Case closed. No further investigation warranted. Agent Marcus Cole, Los Alamos Security Division. Handwritten note in margin: Hoover, make sure Warren disappears quietly. No headlines, no investigations. Some secrets are too important to risk. Dr. Ellis Warren, personal recording. Date: September 18, 1954. Location: unknown, very poor audio quality, whispered voice clearly distressed. They came for me last night, not FBI, not military, something else. Men in dark suits who showed no identification but knew details about my work that weren't in any official files. They didn't arrest me, they didn't threaten me. They just sat in my living room and talked about coincidences, about how terrible accidents happen to people who ask too many questions, about how isolated mountain roads can be dangerous, especially in winter. Then they left, but the message was clear. I'm leaving Berkeley tomorrow. I've told my department I'm taking an extended sabbatical for personal health reasons. They seemed relieved. Apparently, word has gotten around about my mental instability. Before I disappear, I need to put this on record. Sundial 3 exists. It's buried in the Capitan Mountains at coordinates 33, 3,758 degrees north, 105, 6,890 degrees west, approximately 200 feet underground in a lead-line chamber. The device is designed to activate on December 21st, 2026 at 9:16. Mountain Standard Time, triggered by a combination of solar radiation flux, gravitational wave fluctuations, and cosmic background radiation patterns. The yield is estimated at 30 megatons, enough to create a crater 5 miles in diameter and cause seismic activity affecting multiple states. But the true purpose remains unclear. It might be a weapon. It might be a signal. It might be something else entirely. I've hidden detailed technical specifications and location data in multiple caches. If you're listening to this recording, that means you found one of them. The other locations are: static interference obscures specific coordinates. Find them, study them, and most importantly, find Sundial 3 before December 21st, 2026. Because I have a terrible suspicion that what we built in 1954 isn't waiting to destroy something in 2026. It's waiting to welcome something. Recording ends abruptly. Missing person report, Berkeley Police Department. Date, October 3rd, 1954. Subject, Dr. Ellis Warren, age 31. Last known address, 1247 Vine Street, Berkeley, California. Physical description, 510, 160 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, wire-rimmed glasses. Last seen, September 19, 1954, loading personal belongings into 1951 Ford sedan. Circumstances: Dr. Warren informed colleagues at UC Berkeley that he was taking indefinite leave for health reasons. Landlord reports apartment was emptied of personal belongings, but rent paid through December. Vehicle located October 1st in parking lot of Desert View Motel, Flagstaff, Arizona. No evidence of foul play. Status: missing person investigation suspended due to lack of evidence suggesting criminal activity. Case remains open but inactive. Handwritten note attached. Per federal request, minimize investigation efforts. Subject may be involved in sensitive national security matters. Chief Reynolds. Recovered from archive.org Wayback Machine. Original URL deleted. Date posted, March 15, 2025. Username, DesertGhost1954. Account deleted. Forum, Classified Documents Research Board. Site permanently offline. I found something that's been buried for 70 years. My grandfather was a janitor at Los Alamos in the 1950s. After he died last year, I was cleaning out his house and found a metal box hidden under the floorboards. Inside were photocopied documents, audio recordings on old magnetic tape, and handwritten notes from someone named Dr. Ellis Warren. I've spent months verifying these materials. The timestamps match historical records. The technical specifications are consistent with 1950s nuclear technology. The astronomical calculations check out perfectly. But here, the terrifying part. If Warren's data is accurate, there is a 30-megaton nuclear device buried in the Capitan Mountains of New Mexico, programmed to detonate on December 21, 2026, at exactly 9:16 a.m. That's less than 2 years from now. I've uploaded digital copies of all the documents. The location coordinates are 3,758 degrees north, 105, 6,890 degrees west. Someone needs to investigate this before it's too late. The government has been covering this up for 7 decades. How many other theoretical weapons are actually sitting out there waiting for their cosmic alarm clocks to go off? Update: seismic monitoring stations in New Mexico have been registering unusual activity in the Capitan Range. Low-frequency pulses occurring every 72 hours, as if something underground is breathing. Update 2: I'm being followed. Black SUVs with government plates. If something happens to me, remember the coordinates. 3,758 degrees north, 105, 6,890 degrees west. Update 3: They found me. Final post timestamp, March 15, 2025, 11:47. Account deleted March 16, 2025, 12:03 a.m. All linked files removed March 16, 2025, 12:03 a.m. Forum thread archived and deleted March 16, 2025, 12:16 a.m. U.S. Geological Survey Seismic Monitoring Division. Date: December 1st, 2025. Subject: unusual seismic activity, Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Classification: unclassified, declassified under FOIA request 2025-0847. Dear FOIA requester, in response to your inquiry regarding seismic activity in the Capitan Mountains region of New Mexico, we can confirm the following. Between March 2025 and November 2025, USGS monitoring stations detected a series of low-frequency seismic events originating from approximately 37 degrees north, 105, 69 degrees west at a depth of 150 to 200 feet below surface level. These events occur with remarkable regularity every 72 hours, lasting approximately 12 seconds each, with magnitude readings between 1.2 and 1.8 on the Richter scale. The frequency and consistency of these events is unprecedented in our geological records analysis. The seismic signature does not match any known natural phenomena. The regularity suggests an artificial source, but no mining, construction, or industrial activity has been reported in that area. Status: investigation ongoing. Area has been declared off-limits to civilian access pending further geological survey. Note: several monitoring stations have reported electromagnetic anomalies occurring simultaneously with seismic events. Compass readings become erratic and radio communications experience brief interruptions. Dr. Sarah Chen, Senior Seismologist, USGS Earthquake Hazards Program. Handwritten note in margin, file copy to DHS and DOE. Something's down there and it's getting more active. SC. Recovered from damaged recording device. Location found: Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Date found: December 20th, 2026. Audio quality: severely degraded. Sound of wind, footsteps on rocky ground. Unknown voice, male, elderly. Can you see it from here? Unknown voice, female, younger. The entrance is about 50 yards ahead. The radiation readings are off the charts. Male, 72 years. It's been waiting down there for 72 years. Female, are you sure about the time? The activation sequence. Male, December 21st, 9:16. Solar maximum conditions combined with the galactic meridian crossing. Warren's calculations were perfect. Sound of metal detection equipment beeping. Female, there, that's the access shaft. Jesus, look at this thing. It's like they built it to last forever. Male, they did. Teller knew this day would come. The question is, are we here to stop it or to witness it? A long pause, wind continues. Female, the timer display is active. It's counting down. Male, how long? Female, 14 hours, 23 minutes, 17 seconds. Male, then we're too late to disarm it, but maybe that was never the point. A female, what do you mean? Male, what if sundial wasn't designed to be a weapon? What if it's a beacon? A signal that something has been waiting 70 years to receive. Electronic humming begins, growing louder. Female, the device is powering up. All the astronomical sensors are going active. Male, look at the sky. Female, oh my God, what are those lights? Male, the same lights people saw in 1908, the same ones they saw in 1942. They're here for the activation. Recording quality degrades severely. Female, we need to get out of here now. Male, no. This is what Warren died trying to warn us about. Someone needs to witness this. Someone needs to record what happens when the universe finally answers the call. The sound of approaching aircraft or unknown flying objects. Female, barely audible, counting down 9 minutes, 8. Recording ends abruptly. A classified briefing document. Date December 22nd, 2026. In classification, above top secret / cosmic clearance required. Subject Capitan Mountains incident post-event analysis. At 9:16 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on December 21st, 2026, seismic monitoring stations across the southwestern United States detected a massive underground detonation originating from coordinates 33, 3,758 degrees north, 105, 6,890 degrees west in the Capitan Mountains of New Mexico. Official public statement: a previously undetected natural gas pocket exploded due to geological pressure changes. No radioactive materials were involved. Area evacuated as safety precaution. Actual event summary. At exactly 9:16 a.m. MST, the Sundial 3 device activated as programmed. Initial blast yield measured at 32.7 megatons. Seismic activity triggered secondary fault line movements across 3 states. Electromagnetic pulse disabled electronics within a 200-mile radius for 17 minutes. Unusual atmospheric phenomena observed. Aurora-like lights, gravitational anomalies, temporal distortions. Most significant development. At the moment of detonation, ground-based telescopes and satellite imagery detected structured objects in high Earth orbit. Objects that had not been present 24 hours earlier. These objects maintained position for exactly 72 hours before disappearing. Analysis of recovered debris from the Sundial 3 site indicates the device was not destroyed by the explosion. Instead, it appears to have been collected, disassembled by forces unknown, and removed from the site with surgical precision. Current status: the Sundial program has been retroactively classified at the highest possible level. All personnel with knowledge of the project have been reassigned to isolated positions or granted early retirement with NDAs carrying criminal penalties. Dr. Ellis Warren's body was never found. Extensive searches of the Capitan Mountains region have yielded no trace of his remains or the technical documents he allegedly hid. Final note: recent astronomical surveys have detected artificial structures in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, structures that were not present in previous surveys. Radio telescope arrays have begun receiving structured signals from the direction of these objects. The signals repeat every 72 hours. Someone is trying to communicate with us, and we may have just told them we're finally ready to listen. Classified addendum: director's eyes only. Date January 15th, 2027. Sir, you asked me to investigate whether there might be other sundial devices waiting for activation. After extensive review of classified archives, I found references to similar projects dating back to 1952. Operation Hourglass, 1952-1956. Temporal detonation devices supposedly dismantled. Project Meridian, 1958-1962. astronomical trigger systems status unknown. Sundial 4 through Sundial 7, 1955-1957, no deployment records found. But here, what concerns me most, I found Edward Teller's personal notes from 1954, discovered in his private safe after his death in 2003. The final entry, dated September 30th, 1954, contains this passage. Warren suspects we built only one device. Poor naive Warren. How could we risk putting all our hopes on a single beacon? The others are sleeping in their appointed places, waiting for their own cosmic wake-up calls. 2026 was just the beginning. The universe operates on a much longer schedule than human politics. Sir, if Teller's notes are accurate, Sundial 3 was not unique. There may be dozens of these devices buried across the country, each programmed for different astronomical events, each waiting for its moment to signal whatever responded to the Capitan Mountain's activation. I've initiated discrete searches based on Teller's cryptic location references, but given the level of security clearance required and the potential for public panic, I recommend extreme caution in how we proceed. The next major astronomical event matching sundial parameters occurs on August 12, 2045. A rare planetary alignment combined with solar maximum conditions. We have 19 years to find the other devices, assuming, of course, that we want to find them. Director Collins, Deep Projects Division. Final entry, location unknown. Audio recording found in abandoned research facility. Date March 21st, 2027. A clear audio, single voice. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, former nuclear physicist, current. I suppose the term is researcher of inconvenient truths. If you're hearing this recording, it means you found the research facility we abandoned when the government decided our investigation into the Sundial program had become detrimental to national security. We've spent 3 months analyzing the data recovered from the Capitan Mountain site. The blast crater wasn't created by a nuclear explosion. It was created by something being extracted from the Earth with incredible precision. The residual radiation patterns don't match any known atomic signatures. They're organized, structured, almost like a language written in gamma rays. But here, what the government doesn't want you to know, we found more sites. Using Teller's notes and Warren's hidden calculations, we've located 17 other buried installations across the American Southwest. Each one shows the same seismic signatures, regular pulses every 72 hours, increasing in intensity as their programmed activation dates approach. The next one goes off on August 12, 2045, in the Nevada desert. Then September 23, 2051, in the Colorado Rockies. Then October 31st, 2057, in the Arizona Highlands. They're not weapons, they're not even really bombs, they're invitations, and something out there has been very patiently waiting for us to send them. Long pause, sound of papers being organized. I've documented everything we discovered, the mathematical models proving that each sundial device is positioned at locations of specific geological and electromagnetic significance. The evidence that these sites form a geometric pattern visible only from orbital altitude, a pattern that matches no known human design, but corresponds perfectly to star charts found in ancient civilizations. Most disturbing of all, we found Edward Teller's final recordings hidden in a safety deposit box in Los Alamos. Recordings made just weeks before his death in 2003, when he was 95 years old and supposedly suffering from dementia. His voice was clear, his mind was sharp, and his words were terrifying. They came to me in 1952, not in ships or lights in the sky. They came in dreams, in sudden inspirations, in mathematical equations that appeared fully formed in my mind. They showed me how to build the hydrogen bomb. They showed me how to build sundial. They've been guiding human technological development for centuries, waiting for us to develop the tools they need. The sundial devices aren't our weapons, they're theirs. Each one is a communication relay, a way for them to extend their influence when the cosmic conditions are right. 2026 was just the first contact. The real work begins when all 17 devices activate. By then, they won't need to hide anymore. By then, they'll have what they came for. The recording ends there, but attached to it was a sealed envelope containing coordinates for something called Control Zero, a master facility built in 1953, supposedly destroyed in 1957, but according to Teller's notes, still operational and buried beneath Mount Wilson in California. We tried to reach Mount Wilson. We made it 12 miles from the coordinates before our vehicle stopped working. Our communications went dead and we started experiencing what can only be described as temporal displacement. Clocks running backward, shadows falling in the wrong directions, the sun appearing to move across the sky in fast-forward loops. We turned back, but not before we saw the entrance. A perfectly circular opening in the mountainside, too precise to be natural, too ancient to be human. And from within that opening, a sound like breathing, like something vast and patient, waiting for the right moment to exhale. A sound of movement, footsteps. I'm leaving copies of all our research in this facility, hidden in the walls, buried in the foundation, stored in locations that will survive whatever comes next. If you're listening to this, if you found these documents, then you have a choice to make. You can dismiss this as the ravings of paranoid conspiracy theorists. You can convince yourself that everything we've discovered has a rational, mundane explanation. You can go back to your normal life and pretend that the lights in the sky are just weather balloons. That the structured signals from space are just cosmic background radiation. That the 17 countdown timers ticking away beneath American soil are just natural geological phenomena. Or you can accept the truth. We are not alone. We have never been alone. And everything we think we know about human technological progress, about the development of nuclear weapons, about the space race and the Cold War and the atomic age, all of it has been guided by intelligences that view human civilization as a construction project. They gave us the tools, we built what they needed, and now, device by device, they're coming to collect. The next activation is August 12th. 2045, 18 years from now, 18 years to prepare, to understand, to decide whether humanity stands with them or against them when the final device awakens. But I suspect deep down that choice was made for us a long time ago, maybe in 1952, when they first whispered the secrets of nuclear fusion into Edward Teller's dreams. Maybe in 1947, when something crashed in the New Mexico desert, and the government suddenly became very interested in exotic materials and unconventional propulsion systems. Maybe even earlier than that. Maybe the choice was made in 1908, when something exploded over Tunguska with the force of 1,000 atomic bombs. decades before humans had even split their first atom. Recording quality begins to degrade. I hear helicopters approaching. Government most likely, though at this point I'm not sure which government. The boundaries between human and non-human authority may be more blurred than any of us realized. If they take me, if I disappear like Ellis Warren disappeared, remember this. The truth doesn't die just because the truth-tellers are silenced. It waits. It hides. It buries itself deep and emerges when the time is right. The sundial devices are still out there, still counting down, still broadcasting their patient signals to the stars. And something is still listening. The sound of rotors getting closer. December 21st, 2026 was not an ending. It was a beginning. Welcome to the future that Edward Teller built. Welcome to the world where the sky finally answers back. Recording ends as helicopters arrive overhead. Eyes-only / cosmic clearance required. Date December 21st, 2027, 1 year after Capitan Mountain's event. Memorandum for the President. Sir, as requested, this report summarizes all known information regarding the sundial program and its implications for national security. Current status: 16 additional sundial devices remain active at undisclosed locations. Each device continues broadcasting structured signals at regular intervals. Radio telescope arrays worldwide have detected responsive signals from multiple points in the solar system. 3 separate research teams investigating sundial have disappeared under circumstances that defy conventional explanation. Most recent development: on December 21st, 2027, exactly 1 year after the Capitan Mountain's activation, every sundial device simultaneously transmitted a coordinated signal lasting exactly 17 minutes and 16 seconds. The transmission was detected by observatories worldwide, but cannot be decoded using any known cryptographic methods. However, within hours of the transmission, we began receiving structured communications from objects in high Earth orbit. The messages are in perfect English, transmitted on frequencies used by our most sensitive intelligence-gathering satellites. The content of these messages is being analyzed by a joint task force including representatives from NASA, the Department of Defense, and agencies that officially do not exist. The sample message received December 21st, 2027, 21:16 GMT. Phase 1 integration successful. Human technological development proceeding as modeled. Ready to begin Phase 2 coordination protocols. Recommend accelerated timeline for remaining activation sequences. Current socio-political conditions optimal for transition. Sir, it is my professional assessment that the United States government, indeed human government in general, may no longer be the primary authority governing events on this planet. The sundial program was not a weapons development project. It was an infrastructure installation carried out by human hands, but designed by non-human intelligence. We have spent 70 years building a communication network for entities whose true nature and intentions remain unknown. Recommendation: immediate establishment of protocols for contact with non-human intelligence. Current evidence suggests such contact has already been established through channels unknown to elected leadership. The next sundial activation occurs in 18 years. based on current trends. By that time, the distinction between human and non-human technological capabilities may be academic. We built the devices that called them home. Now we must decide whether we can coexist with what answered our call. Respectfully submitted. Director James Morrison, Department of Cosmic Defense. Handwritten note on presidential letterhead. Jim, burn everything. Official policy. This never happened. Sundial is weather balloon research. Case closed. Some truths are too dangerous for democracy. POTUS. Found carved into rock wall. Capitan Mountains, New Mexico. Date of discovery, December 21st, 2054, 27th anniversary of first contact. If you are reading this, then the final device is activated and you survived what came after. My name was Ellis Warren. I died in 1954, but death, it turns out, is not always permanent. They found me in the desert that October, just as I knew they would. But instead of silencing me, they offered me a choice. Join them willingly or watch humanity stumble blindly toward a future they were building with or without our consent. I chose to join them, not because I trusted them, but because someone needed to be on the inside documenting what they really wanted, preparing humanity for what was coming. I have spent 70 years learning their true nature. They are not invaders. They are not conquerors. They are gardeners. Earth is not their first world and humanity is not their first cultivation. Across the galaxy, they have guided the development of dozens of species, nudging them toward technological sophistication, teaching them to split atoms and reach for the stars, preparing them for the moment when they become useful. Useful for what? To build the infrastructure they need to move between worlds, to construct the communication networks that span star systems, to serve as the hands and minds that transform raw planets into something greater. The sundial devices were just the beginning. Every satellite we launched, every computer we built, every quantum processor we developed, all designed according to specifications they provided, all part of a vast machine whose true purpose we never understood. But now you know. Now in 2054, as the final device awakens and their ships finally descend from the skis openly, you understand what we really built during humanity's brief age of atomic glory. We built the infrastructure for our own integration. Do not resist them. Resistance is futile, not because they're too powerful, but because resistance makes no sense. You cannot resist becoming part of something you have always been part of. You cannot fight an invasion that happened generations before you were born. Instead, learn from them, work with them, and remember that every choice humanity makes from this point forward is still a choice, even if the options are more limited than we once believed. The universe is vast and strange and full of intelligence that predates human civilization by millions of years. We are not its masters, but we need not be its slaves. We can be its partners if we are wise enough to accept what we have always been, children playing with tools we barely understand, guided by parents we never knew we had. The sundial directive is complete. Welcome to your real future. Dr. Ellis Warren, 1923 to 1954 to infinity. Final transmission. Broadcast simultaneously on all frequencies. December 21st, 2015, 9:16 a.m. GMT, 100 years after Project Sundial began. This is Mission Control. Not the mission control you know, but the one that has been guiding your species since you first looked up at the stars and wondered if you were alone. You are never alone. The integration is complete. All 17 sundial devices have fulfilled their purpose. The infrastructure is in place. The communication network spans from Earth to the edge of the solar system and beyond. Humanity has passed its final test. Welcome to the galactic community. Your real education begins now. Dr. Alexei Morozov, Soviet Geological Survey, Tunguska Region, Siberia, October 1959. Classification, Secretina Secret. Declassified 2025. Entry 1, October 12, 1959. Audio quality poor. Wind interference. This is Dr. Alexei Morozov, Soviet Geological Survey designation 4471. I am recording this for the scientific record, though I suspect it will never see the light of day. The date is October 12, 1959. I'm approximately 40 kilometers southeast of the Tunguska impact site, and I fear we have made a terrible mistake in coming here. But let me start from the beginning. 3 weeks ago, I was summoned to Moscow by the Academy of Sciences, or so I thought. A meeting was held not in the familiar halls of the Academy, but in a nondescript building on Lubyanka Square. Even a geophysicist like myself knows what that means. KGB without question. The man who greeted me wore the pressed uniform of a Soviet army colonel, but his eyes held the cold calculation I'd learned to recognize during my time in Antarctica. Dr. Morozov, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. Your expertise is required for a matter of national importance. He spread photographs across the metal table between us. Satellite imagery, clearly recent given the resolution quality I'd never seen before. The images showed the Tunguska region from above, but with strange geometric overlays and radiation measurements marked in red. What am I looking at, colonels? Volkov, he replied, Colonel Volkov, and you're looking at proof that the Tunguska event of 1908 was not what our scientists have claimed. The photograph showed radiation patterns that made no sense for a meteor impact. Instead of the expected circular dispersion, the gamma radiation formed precise geometric shapes, hexagons that stretched for kilometers beneath the forest floor. Our Cosmos satellites detected these anomalies 3 months ago, Volkov continued. 51 years after the explosion, the site is still active. I studied the images more carefully. The radiation signatures were unlike anything in my experience, pulsing in regular intervals according to the timestamps. This suggests an artificial source. Precisely, Volkov's smile held no warmth. Which is why you're going to Tunguska, Dr. Morozov. Your cover will be a routine geological survey mapping mineral deposits for the 5-year plan. Your real mission is to determine the source of these signals. And if I refuse, then you will be reassigned to study rocks in Siberia permanently, a much less comfortable arrangement than what I'm offering. The threat was clear. I accepted the assignment that afternoon. Now, as I sit in this makeshift camp, listening to the wind howl through trees that have been bent and twisted for over half a century, I understand why previous expeditions never filed complete reports. The forest here feels wrong in ways that have nothing to do with the visible damage from the explosion. My equipment detected the first anomaly this morning. Entry 2, October 13, 1959. Audio quality moderate. Electronic interference noted. The electromagnetic readings are impossible. I've spent the day taking measurements across a grid pattern, working systematically toward what the 1927 Kulik expedition marked as the blast epicenter. Every device I carry, magnetometer, Geiger counter, seismograph, registers patterns that violate everything I know about physics. The magnetic field strength increases as we approach the center, but not in the gradual manner one would expect from a buried metallic mass. Instead, it pulses in 3-second intervals with mathematical precision. Pulse, pause, like a heartbeat. My Geiger counter tells an even stranger story. Background radiation should be elevated uniformly if this were the site of a nuclear or radiological event. Instead, the radiation forms distinct geometric patterns in the soil. When I map the readings, they create perfect hexagons, each approximately 50 meters across, arranged in a honeycomb pattern that extends beyond my ability to measure. Colonel Volkov has said little during our trek, but I notice he carries no scientific instruments of his own. Instead, his pack contains radio equipment far more sophisticated than anything issued for a geological survey. He reports to Moscow twice daily using codes I don't recognize. The local Evenki guides refuse to accompany us beyond the outer tree line. They speak of lights that dance beneath the ice at night and a sound they describe as iron screaming. When I press them for details, the eldest guide would only say, "The sky fell there, but something else rose up." I dismissed this as folklore until we made camp last night. At 300 hours, I was awakened by a sound I've never heard before. A deep rhythmic vibration that seemed to come from the earth itself. It lasted exactly 3 minutes, then stopped abruptly. Volkov was already awake, standing at the edge of our camp with his radio in hand. "Did you record that?" he asked. I had not thought to record it, which now strikes me as a significant oversight for someone trained in scientific observation. The sound was so alien that my mind initially rejected it as impossible. "What was it?" I asked. Volkov's expression in the moonlight was unreadable. "The reason we're here, Doctor." This morning, I discovered that several of my instruments had malfunctioned during the night. Not broken, malfunctioned in very specific ways. The magnetometer now reads magnetic north as pointing directly toward the blast epicenter, regardless of our actual position. The seismograph recorded seismic activity every 3 seconds throughout the night. Perfect sine waves that should be impossible in stable geological conditions. Something is calling from beneath the permafrost. Entry 3, October 15th, 1959. Audio quality poor. Severe electronic interference. We have reached the epicenter. I understand now why Kulik's expeditions found no crater. This was not an impact. It was an emergence. The blast zone stretches for kilometers in every direction, trees flattened in the perfect radial pattern that has puzzled scientists for decades. But at the precise center, in a circle roughly 100 meters in diameter, the forest is untouched. Ancient pines tower above us, their bark scarred but their structure intact, as if the explosion flowed around them rather than through them. The soil here tells a different story than any meteor impact. My equipment detects metallic fragments, but when I analyze their composition, the results are disturbing. The isotopic ratios are wrong, not just unusual, impossible. These metals contain isotopes that shouldn't exist in nature, arranged in configurations that suggest artificial manipulation. While taking samples this morning, my spade struck something hard beneath the permafrost. After an hour of careful excavation, I uncovered a shard of metal unlike anything I've encountered in 20 years of geological work. The fragment is approximately 15 centimeters long, smooth as glass and perfectly black. It reflects no light, creating an absence in my vision that strains the eye to look upon. Most unsettling of all, it vibrates, a constant, barely perceptible vibration at exactly 3 hertz, the same interval as the magnetic pulses I've been recording. When I showed the fragment to Volkov, his reaction confirmed my growing suspicions about this expedition. "Where exactly did you find this?" he demanded, snatching the metal from my hands with gloved fingers. "Buried approximately 2 meters down, directly. You will note its location precisely and excavate no further in that area." He sealed the fragment in a lead-lined container I hadn't known he carried. "Your orders are to survey and report, not to collect specimens." "Colonel, this could be the key to understanding." Dr. Morozov, his voice carried the quiet authority of a man accustomed to unquestioned obedience. The last scientist who asked too many questions about what we found here is now buried under 2 meters of ice. I trust you understand my meaning. The threat was delivered so casually that it took a moment to register. Previous expeditions, previous scientists, how many teams had been sent to this place? That evening, while Volkov was occupied with his radio communications, I managed to take additional readings from the area where I had found the fragment. The results make no sense. According to any geological model I know, the metallic object appears to be part of a much larger structure buried beneath us. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a vast geometric form extending deep into the earth. Not randomly distributed metal deposits, but organized architecture. Hexagonal chambers connected by corridors stretching down beyond the range of my equipment. Whatever lies beneath the Tunguska site is not natural. It's not human. And according to my radiocarbon dating of the surrounding soil samples, it's been here far longer than the 1908 explosion. The explosion didn't bring something to this place. It revealed something that was already here. Entry 4, October 17, 1959. Audio quality moderate. Background humming noted. I have accessed Colonel Volkov's classified files. I know this was a breach of protocol that could cost me my life, but scientific curiosity has always been my weakness. While Volkov was conducting his evening radio check, I managed to photograph several documents from his secure case. What I discovered has rewritten my understanding of both this expedition and the Tunguska event itself. The files contain correspondence dating back to 1908, including telegrams between the American inventor Nikola Tesla and Arctic explorer Robert Peary. The telegrams discuss Tesla's experiments with wireless energy transmission from his Wardenclyffe facility on Long Island. According to the documents, Tesla was testing a revolutionary new technology, the ability to transmit electrical energy through the Earth's atmosphere to any point on the globe. His target for the initial test was the Arctic region, where Peary was conducting his polar expeditions. The most revealing telegram is dated June 28, 1908, 2 days before the Tunguska explosion. R. Peary, final test scheduled 2:14 GMT June 30th. Expect atmospheric disturbance Arctic region. Exercise extreme caution. Energy dispersal may exceed calculations. Nikola Tesla. Peary's response dated July 2nd. Tesla, your test successful beyond measure. Sky over Siberia lit like day. Effect visible from Greenland. Indigenous populations report ground shaking 801,000 miles from target zone. Whatever you activated, it responded. Recommend immediate cessation of experiments. R. Peary. But the most disturbing document is Tesla's private journal entry included in the KGB files through means I cannot determine. The transmission was successful, but not in the manner intended. We have awakened something that was not meant to wake. The energy beam penetrated not just the atmosphere, but the ancient ice. What we interpreted as successful power transmission was in fact a response signal. We are not the first to wield such power. We're merely the first to do so blindly. Tesla's Wardenclyffe facility was shut down and demolished just days after the Tunguska event. Official records claim financial difficulties, but the classified Soviet documents suggest otherwise. Tesla himself wrote to a colleague, "Some discoveries are too dangerous for the world as it exists." The KGB files contain additional evidence that Soviet authorities have known the truth about Tunguska for decades. Geological surveys in the 1930s detected the same anomalous structures I've been mapping, but the research was classified and the scientists involved were reassigned to other projects, or as Colonel Volkov implied, disposed of entirely. According to the files, at least 3 previous expeditions have been sent to investigate the Tunguska site since 1945. None filed complete reports. 2 teams vanished entirely. The 3rd team's leader, Dr. Yuri Petrov, was found frozen to death in his tent. His final notes described hexagonal chambers that extend beyond measurement and a sound like the earth itself breathing. The current expedition was authorized after satellite imagery revealed increased activity at the site. The geometric radiation patterns I've been studying have been growing stronger since 1957, suggesting that whatever lies beneath the permafrost is becoming more active. As I write this, I can hear that deep rhythmic vibration again. It begins every night at exactly 300 hours and continues for precisely 3 minutes. But tonight, it's different, stronger. And I swear I can detect patterns within the sound, mathematical sequences that suggest intelligence. Volkov has been monitoring my activities more closely since I questioned him about the metal fragment. I suspect he knows I've accessed his files. If something happens to me, I hope this journal will survive to tell the truth about what we found at Tunguska. The explosion in 1908 was not a meteor impact. It was not even Tesla's wireless energy transmission, though that may have been the trigger. It was something far older responding to our signals. Something that has been waiting beneath the ice for millennia, and now we've woken it up. Entry 5, October 19th, 1959. Audio quality excellent. All interference ceased. The silence is worse than the sounds. For 3 days, the electromagnetic interference that has plagued our equipment has been growing stronger. Radio communications with Moscow became impossible. My instruments registered readings that exceeded their calibrated ranges. The deep rhythmic vibrations from beneath the earth increased in frequency and duration. Then, at dawn this morning, everything stopped. The sudden absence of electromagnetic activity is more unsettling than the anomalies themselves. It suggests that whatever has been transmitting from beneath the site has achieved its purpose. Volkov received new orders during the night via emergency radio protocol. We are to begin excavation, immediately using equipment that was airdropped to our location under cover of darkness. The machinery includes drilling apparatus far more sophisticated than anything required for a geological survey. "We're going down," Volkov informed me without preamble. "Moscow wants to know what's beneath us." "Colonel, I must advise against aggressive excavation. The structural integrity of whatever lies below is unknown if we damage it." "Dr. Morozov, you are here to provide scientific observation, not strategic planning. The decision has been made at the highest levels." The drilling began at 800 hours. We penetrated the permafrost easily, but at a depth of 5 meters, the drill bit encountered something that sent vibrations through the entire operation. Not rock, not metal, but something that rang like a bell when struck. By midday, we had exposed the upper surface of a structure that defies geological explanation. The surface is composed of hexagonal plates, each roughly 2 meters across, fitted together with seamless precision. The material is unlike anything in my experience, harder than steel, but with a crystalline structure that suggests organic growth rather than mechanical manufacture. The most disturbing discovery came when we cleared debris from one of the hexagonal plates. Beneath the ice and soil, the surface is not damaged or corroded despite its apparent age. Instead, it gleams as if newly made, with patterns of light that pulse through the material in the same 3-second intervals I've been recording. The structure is active. Alive, perhaps, though I hesitate to use that term for something clearly artificial. As we worked to expose more of the surface, I noticed that my instruments were registering new types of activity. Electromagnetic pulses were emanating from the structure, but these were not random signals. They followed mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci progressions, and other patterns that suggest deliberate communication. "It's trying to talk to us," I told Volkov during our afternoon break. His response chilled me. "No, doctor, it's talking to something else. We're just listening in." That evening, while reviewing the day's data, I made a discovery that has shaken my understanding of human history. The electromagnetic patterns I've been recording match perfectly with radio signals detected by astronomers at the Jodrell Bank Observatory in England. The signals, dismissed by most scientists as background radiation, have been recorded intermittently since 1908, but the signals don't originate from space. They originate here, at Tunguska, and they're being transmitted outward at regular intervals. Whatever lies beneath us has been sending messages to space for over 50 years. Entry 6, October 21st, 1959. Audio quality poor. Voice shows signs of extreme stress. We've broken through. After 2 days of careful excavation, we created an opening large enough to lower equipment into the structure below. The chamber we've accessed is vast, with walls that curve away into darkness beyond the range of our lights. The air inside is not stale, as one would expect from a sealed underground space. Instead, it carries a metallic taste and a barely perceptible electric charge that makes the hair on my arm stand upright. Most unsettling of all, the air is warm, several degrees above freezing, despite the permafrost that has covered this place for millennia. The chamber walls are covered in the same hexagonal plating we discovered on the surface, but here, the patterns of light are more complex. Entire sections pulse in synchronized sequences, creating cascades of illumination that travel around the perimeter like waves. I descended into the chamber using mountaineering equipment against Volkov's direct orders. The colonel wanted to wait for specialized personnel from Moscow, but scientific curiosity overcame caution. What I found below has convinced me that we are dealing with something far beyond human understanding. The chamber is not empty. It contains machinery, though that term is inadequate to describe what I observed. Geometric structures rise from the floor like crystalline trees, their surfaces covered in components that shift and reconfigure as I watched. The machinery, if it can be called that, appears to be self-repairing, self-modifying. At the center of the chamber stands a pillar roughly 3 meters in height, composed of the same dark material as the fragment I discovered earlier. But this pillar is not inert. It pulses with internal light, and as I approached, I could feel vibrations in my bones that matched the 3 Hz frequency I've been recording. When I placed my hand on the pillar's surface, the entire chamber responded. Lights flashed in sequence around the walls. The machinery hummed to life, and I felt a sensation I can only describe as contact. Not physical contact, but something deeper. For a moment, I sensed vast intelligence, ancient beyond measure, awakening from long dormancy. And I understood with terrifying clarity what Tesla had done in 1908. His wireless energy transmission had not simply sent power through the atmosphere. It had followed a path of least resistance, drilling through the Earth's magnetic field and striking this buried structure with precisely the frequency needed to activate its dormant systems. The Tunguska explosion was not caused by Tesla's energy beam. It was caused by this ancient machinery starting up after eons of silence, venting excess energy in the only direction available, upward through the overlying rock and permafrost, creating the devastating blast that flattened the forest above. When I climbed back to the surface, I found Volkov in animated radio communication with Moscow. From what I could hear of his side of the conversation, our discovery has caused considerable alarm at the highest levels of government. Yes, sir, it appears to be functional. No, sir, we don't understand its purpose. What do you mean, similar structures? Similar structures. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. How many of these installations exist? How long have they been buried beneath the Earth's surface? That night, as I attempted to process the implications of our discovery, the chamber below us began transmitting again. But this time, the signals were different. Instead of the regular pulses I'd been recording, the electromagnetic emissions formed complex patterns that my equipment interpreted as modulated communications. The ancient machinery was not just awakening, it was calling home. Entry 7, October 23, 1959. Audio quality good, voice controlled but tense. They're coming for me. Colonel Volkov received orders this morning to terminate the expedition and return to Moscow immediately. But first, he informed me, all physical evidence must be secured and all personnel debriefed according to special protocols. I know what special protocols means in KGB parlance. The equipment we brought to the site has been supplemented by specialized gear that arrived with a new team of personnel during the night. These men wear no insignia and speak with accents I cannot place. They brought with them instruments I don't recognize and chemicals whose purpose I can only guess. Dr. Morozov, Volkov informed me over breakfast. Your valuable contribution to this expedition will be properly recognized in our final report. However, the sensitive nature of our discoveries requires that certain security measures be implemented. What kind of security measures? The kind that ensure state secrets remain secret. I have hidden this journal and my personal recordings in a cache approximately 1 kilometer northeast of our primary camp. If I don't survive to retrieve them, perhaps someone else will find them and understand what we discovered here. Before they seal me away from the world, I want to record what I believe happened at Tunguska based on everything I've observed and documented. The structure beneath us is not human in origin. The materials, the construction techniques, the technology, all of it speaks to a civilization far more advanced than anything we've achieved. Based on geological analysis of the surrounding rock, I estimate the installation has been here for at least 10,000 years, possibly much longer. The machinery I observed in the chamber appears to be some kind of communication array designed to send and receive signals across vast distances. The regular electromagnetic pulses I've been recording are not random transmissions. They're a beacon announcing the location of Earth to whoever might be listening in the depths of space. Tesla's 1908 experiment accidentally activated this beacon after millennia of dormancy. The massive energy discharge that created the Tunguska explosion was simply the ancient machinery powering up, like a generator that had been offline for geological ages suddenly roaring back to life. But the most terrifying aspect of this discovery is what it implies about our planet's history. If one such installation exists beneath Siberia, how many others lie buried across the Earth? Who built them? And why? I fear we are not alone in the universe. Worse, I fear we never have been. The electromagnetic signals emanating from the Tunguska site have been growing stronger and more complex since we began our excavation. What started as simple mathematical progressions has evolved into what can only be described as conversation, questions and responses, acknowledgements and confirmations. Something is answering the beacon's call. Last night, I observed lights in the sky that bore no resemblance to any natural phenomenon I know. They moved with purpose and intelligence, geometric formations that pulsed in synchronization with the signals from below. They hovered over our campsite for nearly an hour before disappearing beyond the horizon. Volkov pretended not to see them, but I noticed he spent the rest of the night in radio contact with Moscow. This morning, he informed me that our mission was complete. Complete, I asked. We've barely begun to understand what we found here. We've confirmed the presence of anomalous structures and documented their basic characteristics, he replied. That was our objective. Our objective was to determine the source of the satellite readings. We've discovered something that could revolutionize our understanding of human history, of our place in the universe. We can't simply walk away. Volkov's expression remained impassive. Dr. Morozov, there are forces at work here that extend far beyond your scientific curiosity. This site will be classified at the highest levels and placed under permanent monitoring. Your role is finished. And if I refuse to remain silent about what we found, then you will join the other scientists who asked inconvenient questions. The threat was delivered with casual finality. I understood that my choice was between compliance and death, but I refused to let this discovery be buried along with me. Zentry 8, October 24, 1959. Final entry. audio quality whisper, recorded in secret. They think I'm asleep. The debriefing began this afternoon with injections they claimed were vaccinations against Arctic diseases. I recognized the symptoms immediately. Memory suppression drugs designed to fog recollection and make coherent testimony impossible. But my time in Antarctica taught me certain tricks for maintaining mental clarity under adverse conditions. I forced myself to vomit up the medication before it could take full effect, though I had to maintain the appearance of compliance. While the others believe I'm unconscious, I've managed to recover my hidden cache and record this final entry. In a few hours, they will transport me back to Moscow for extended debriefing. I know I will not survive that process, but before they take me, I want to record my final observations about what lies beneath Tunguska. The installation is not just a communication array, it's part of a network. During my last descent into the chamber, I discovered additional passages leading deeper into the structure. Following these corridors as far as my equipment would allow, I found evidence of similar installations at vast distances, electromagnetic signatures that suggest a global network of ancient technology, all connected by underground transmission lines that follow the Earth's magnetic field. Whatever civilization built these installations was not indigenous to Earth. The mathematical principles governing their construction are based on physical constants that suggest an origin in a different stellar environment. They came here, established this network, and then vanished. But they left their machinery behind, dormant but functional, waiting for the right signal to reactivate it. Tesla provided that signal in 1908, not through malice, but through ignorance. His wireless energy transmission found the path of least resistance through the Earth's magnetic field and struck the Tunguska installation with precisely the frequency needed to bring it online. Now the beacon is active, sending its signal into space, and something has heard it. The lights I observed in the sky are not natural phenomena. They are reconnaissance, preparation for something much larger. The electromagnetic conversations I've been recording are not random communication. They're coordinates, timestamps, invasion plans. We have awakened something that was meant to remain sleeping, and we lack the knowledge or technology to control what we've unleashed. I can hear them approaching my position, boots on frozen ground, voices speaking in languages I don't recognize. They've discovered my absence from the medical tent. If this recording survives, if someone finds it and understands what I've documented here, remember this: the explosion in 1908 was not the end of anything. It was the beginning. The door is unlocking, and we are not prepared for what lies beyond it. Whatever you do, do not dig further. It listens. It remembers. And now it knows where we are. Recording ends. Electromagnetic interference resumes. Soviet State Security Archives. File Tunguska Black 7. Date October 30th, 1959. Dr. Alexei Morozov was found deceased in his quarters at the Lubyanka Medical Facility on October 29, 1959. Official cause of death: complications from severe frostbite sustained during Arctic research operations. His personal effects have been confiscated and classified under state security protocols. All materials related to the Tunguska expedition are hereby classified beyond top secret and sealed under Special Protocol 7. Access is restricted to personnel with clearance level Obsidian or higher. The Tunguska site has been declared a restricted military zone. Unauthorized access is prohibited under penalty of death. Dr. Morozov's journal and recordings were destroyed according to standard procedure. Official records end. Posted to file sharing site March 15, 2025. Removed by request of Russian Federation authorities March 17, 2025. The above documents were discovered in a cache of declassified Soviet files released following the collapse of certain government archives. Authentication is ongoing, but preliminary analysis suggests genuineness. Dr. Morozov's journal was not destroyed as claimed in official records. It was hidden, preserved in the permafrost, waiting to be found. Satellite imagery from 2024 shows renewed activity at the Tunguska site. Electromagnetic anomalies detected by multiple international monitoring stations. Construction of unknown purpose observed at the coordinates Morozov identified. The lights have returned to the Siberian sky. Whatever Tesla awakened in 1908 was only the beginning. The door is not just unlocking, it's opening. Recovered journal entry. Classification, redacted. Subject, Eli Granger, independent journalist. Date range, July 15th to 18th, 2023. Location, Bohemian Grove, Monte Rio, California. The following document was recovered from an encrypted server farm in Iceland. The journalist's current whereabouts remain unknown. Ed. My name is Eli Granger, and I'm writing this because I may not live long enough to tell it in person. What I witnessed in the redwoods of Northern California will haunt me until my dying day, whenever that may come. It started 3 weeks ago with an email that shouldn't have existed. I was in my cramped Oakland apartment, nursing my third cup of coffee and scrolling through encrypted channels where whistleblowers sometimes surface. My secure inbox pinged. A message from an address that was just a string of numbers and letters, routed through 7 different proxy servers. No subject line, just an attachment and 4 lines of text. You want truth? Go to the redwoods. Bring a black suit and a quiet soul. July 15th to 18th. The fire reveals all. The attachment was a high-resolution scan of what appeared to be a guest registry for the Bohemian Grove, that mysterious all-male retreat where the world's most powerful men allegedly gather each summer to commune with nature. I'd written about the Grove before, relying on second-hand accounts and leaked photographs from the 1980s, but this was different. The names on the list made my blood run cold. Former presidents, current senators, military contractors whose companies I've been investigating for years, CEOs of tech giants, pharmaceutical corporations, defense contractors, media moguls who controlled the narrative of entire nations, all scheduled to attend something called the Midsummer Encampment. At the bottom of the scan was a forged access pass with my photograph, a professional headshot I'd never sent to anyone, digitally altered to show me in a black suit and tie. The name read, Edmund Gray, Logistics Consultant, Prometheus Industries. Someone with serious resources wanted me inside that grove. The question was why. I should have walked away. Should have deleted the email and gone back to writing about municipal corruption and corporate tax avoidance. Safe stories, stories that didn't get journalists killed. Instead, I packed a black suit and drove north to Sonoma County. The road to Monte Rio winds through some of the most beautiful country in California. Ancient redwoods tower over narrow highways, their canopy so thick that midday feels like twilight. It's the kind of place where you'd expect to find hippie communes and organic wineries, not shadowy cabals plotting the fate of nations. But as I learned in my Navy intelligence days, The most dangerous secrets are always hidden in the most innocent places. I parked at a motel in Guerneville and walked the perimeter of the Bohemian Grove property that evening. 2,000 acres of private forest surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Security cameras every 50 feet. Motion sensors in the trees. The kind of setup you'd expect around a military installation, not a summer camp for rich men. The main gate was staffed by guards who looked more like special forces operators than private security. Black uniforms, tactical gear, the flat stare of men who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Whatever happened inside those redwoods, they were serious about keeping it secret. The forged pass worked perfectly, too perfectly. The guard scanned the barcode, checked my face against the photo, and waved me through without a second glance. Either the forger was a genius or someone very powerful wanted me inside. Neither possibility was comforting. The grove itself was exactly as described in the leaked accounts I'd read. Massive redwood trees, some over 1,000 years old, stretched toward a canopy so thick it blocked out the sun. Gravel paths wound between rustic cabins and open-air lodges, each marked with whimsical names: Owl's Nest, Dragon's Den, Caveman's Lodge. It would have been charming if not for the underlying sense of wrongness that permeated everything. The other guests, I couldn't think of them as normal people, not after seeing that registry, moved through this camp with the easy confidence of men accustomed to absolute power. They wore casual clothes during the day, khakis, polo shirts, boat shoes, the uniform of American aristocracy. But their conversations, caught in fragments as I passed, revealed the true scope of their influence. The Shanghai Index will drop exactly 17%. Tell the secretary that Operation Nightfall is greenlit for October. Media blackout should hold for at least 72 hours. I posed as a logistics consultant, which gave me an excuse to wander the grounds with a clipboard and camera phone, confiscated at the gate and replaced with an approved device that couldn't access external networks. The cover story worked well enough. Rich men are accustomed to being served by invisible people who handle the mundane details of their lives. But as the day wore on, I began to notice the symbols. Owls everywhere. Carved into tree trunks, etched on building facades, worked into the designs of benches and lampposts. Not cute, friendly owls. These were stylized, angular, with eyes that seemed to follow you as you walked past. The largest was a 40-foot stone statue positioned on a small island in an artificial lake at the heart of the grove. Even in daylight, it radiated a sense of ancient malevolence. Beautiful, isn't it? I turned to find a man in his 70s watching me stare at the giant owl. Silver hair, expensive casual wear, the kind of artificial tan that comes from winters in Palm Beach. His eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen, almost colorless. The Owl of Bohemia, he continued, joining me at the lake's edge. Been watching over this place for over a century. Some say it's just decorative, others know better. Know better how? I asked, immediately regretting the question. I was supposed to be invisible, unremarkable. The old man smiled, revealing teeth too white and too perfect for his age. You'll see tonight, Mr. Gray. The cremation of care waits for no man, not even consultants. He walked away before I could respond, leaving me staring at the owl statue and wondering how much my cover had already been blown. That evening, as twilight settled over the grove, the atmosphere changed completely. The casual bonhomie of the day disappeared, replaced by something far more serious and ritualistic. Men emerged from their cabins wearing dark robes with hoods that obscured their faces. Some carried torches, others strange ceremonial objects I couldn't identify. I found a dark robe hanging in my assigned cabin along with a note. Attendance is mandatory. Silence is sacred. The owl sees all. What I witnessed that night will stay with me forever. As darkness fell, hundreds of robed figures processed through the forest paths, converging on the lake where the great owl statue loomed. Torches flickered between the trees like malevolent fireflies. The only sounds were footsteps on gravel and the whisper of fabric against bark. I followed the crowd, keeping my head down and my hood up. The robes smelled of incense and something else, something organic and unpleasant that I couldn't identify. We gathered in a natural amphitheater around the lake. The owl statue dominated the scene, its eyes seeming to glow red in the torchlight. A wooden boat had been prepared at the water's edge, and in it lay what appeared to be the effigy of a child, small, wrapped in white cloth, disturbingly lifelike. But as I stared at the bundle, a horrible doubt crept into my mind. The proportions were too perfect, the weight distribution too natural. The way the cloth clung to what lay beneath suggested something more substantial than straw and sawdust. A figure in an elaborate robe stepped onto a platform beside the owl. Even with his face hidden, I recognized the bearing and voice of a man who'd been on television every night for years, a former president whose policies had shaped a generation. Brothers of the Grove, his voice boomed across the water, amplified by hidden speakers. We gather once again beneath the ancient eyes of wisdom to perform the sacred rite that frees us from the burdens of conscience. The crowd responded in unison. We banish care and cast it to the flames. Care, that pale and common thing that binds the hands of power. Care that whispers doubt in the ears of decision. Care that stays the sword of necessary action. We banish care and cast it to the flames. The ritualized call and response continued for nearly an hour. Invocations to ancient deities whose names I recognized from my study of Middle Eastern mythology. Moloch, the Carthaginian god of child sacrifice. Enlil, the Mesopotamian lord of wind and authority. Names that shouldn't have been spoken by American leaders in the 21st century. But the most disturbing element wasn't the pagan imagery or even the suggestions of child sacrifice. It was the casual way these men, titans of industry, shapers of policy, guardians of democracy, participated in rituals that explicitly celebrated the abandonment of human compassion. The ceremony reached its climax when the boat carrying the effigy was pushed out onto the lake. Flames erupted from the water around it. Hidden gas jets, I realized, creating the illusion of supernatural fire. The figure in the boat burned quickly, the white cloth falling away to reveal. I still can't be certain what I saw. In the flickering light, with smoke obscuring my vision and my mind reeling from the horror of it all, it might have been an elaborately constructed mannequin. The realistic movement could have been caused by the flames consuming internal supports. The sounds, grief, high-pitched, quickly cut off, might have been air escaping from burning materials. But the way some of the robed figures wept as the fire consumed its offering, the way others cheered with genuine ecstasy, suggested something far more sinister than theatrical pageantry. As the flames died down, the crowd began to disperse. I started to follow them back toward the cabins, but a hand fell on my shoulder. Mr. Gray, it was the old man from earlier, still wearing his ceremonial robes. You're invited to the inner circle gathering, a rare honor for a consultant. Before I could refuse, two other figures flanked me, not threatening exactly, but their presence made it clear that declining wasn't an option. They led me deeper into the forest, away from the main paths to a clearing I hadn't seen during my earlier reconnaissance. Here, perhaps 30 men stood in a circle around a fire pit carved directly into the bedrock. Unlike the theatrical grandeur of the main ceremony, this felt ancient and deadly serious. The inner circle ritual began at midnight. The participants had exchanged their dark robes for masks of polished bone, owl faces with hollow eye sockets that seemed to bore into your soul. They moved with practiced precision, suggesting this ceremony had been performed countless times before. The man who led the earlier ritual stepped into the center of the circle. Without his presidential bearing and familiar voice, he seemed diminished, just another acolyte serving powers older than nations. "Brothers of the inner grove," he intoned, "gather to receive the wisdom of the ancient ones and to consecrate the plans that will shape the world's destiny." The response came in a language I didn't recognize at first, harsh consonants and guttural vowels that seemed to bypass the conscious mind and speak directly to something primal and terrified in the human psyche. But as my Navy intelligence training kicked in, I began to parse familiar elements. This was Akkadian, the ancient language of Mesopotamia, dead for over 2,000 years. They were chanting the names of forgotten gods and promising them sacrifices of nations. Symbols were drawn in the ash around the fire pit, not random occult doodles, but specific sigils I recognized from declassified CIA documents. Project MK Ultra had experimented with ritualistic programming using ancient symbols and dead languages to bypass conscious resistance in human subjects. The research had supposedly been discontinued in the 1970s. Apparently, it had just moved to a more exclusive venue. The ceremony continued for hours. Maps were produced and spread on the ground, not of geographical territories, but of economic zones, resource deposits, population centers. Plans were discussed in a mixture of English and Akkadian, but the intent was clear enough. Wars to be started, governments to be toppled, populations to be controlled. And through it all, the participants spoke of themselves not as American leaders serving American interests, but as servants of the ancient ones, preparing the world for some greater transformation. The harvest approaches. The sleepers must be awakened. The old seals must be broken, in the name of those who wait in the deep places. The circle responded, "Let the work continue." I crouched in the shadows beyond the firelight, recording everything on a digital audio device I'd hidden in my shoe. But as the night wore on, I began to understand that what I was witnessing wasn't just corruption or conspiracy in any conventional sense. These men genuinely believed they were serving inhuman masters. Whether those masters were real or imagined didn't matter. The policies they were planning would affect millions of lives based on the whims of entities that viewed humanity as livestock. The ritual concluded with each participant drinking from a silver chalice and making individual pledges. The liquid looked black in the firelight, and several men convulsed briefly after drinking, their eyes rolling back to show only white. As dawn approached, the circle dissolved. The participants removed their masks, revealing themselves to be exactly who I'd suspected. Former presidents, current senators, military leaders, corporate titans. They shook hands and exchanged quiet words like businessmen concluding a profitable meeting, which in a sense they were. I made it back to my cabin as the first light filtered through the redwood canopy, but I knew I couldn't stay much longer. Whatever protection my forged identity provided was wearing thin. Too many meaningful looks, too many knowing smiles. They were playing with me, letting me see just enough to understand the scope of what I'd stumbled into. But there was one more place I needed to investigate before I could flee. The lodge marked Styx, accessed by code only, sat apart from the main camp, connected by a service road that didn't appear on any of the maps provided to guests. I'd noticed it during my first day's reconnaissance, but hadn't found an opportunity to investigate. The building itself was unremarkable, standard wooden construction that matched the other lodges, designed to blend into the forest environment. But the security was anything but standard. Biometric scanners, electromagnetic locks, motion sensors that could detect a heartbeat from 50 feet away. Fortunately, my anonymous benefactor had provided more than just a forged access pass. Hidden in the lining of my suit jacket was a USB device that looked like a standard thumb drive, but contained sophisticated hacking tools developed by someone with serious technical skills. When plugged into the lodge's security system, it created a temporary blind spot in the sensors and provided the access codes needed to bypass the locks. Whoever wanted me to see what lay inside had planned this infiltration down to the smallest detail. The lodge's interior was a facade. Behind a false wall accessed by yet another hidden panel, stairs led down into the bedrock beneath the forest. The passage was older than the buildings above, carved stone rather than modern construction, lit by electric fixtures that had been retrofitted into ancient sconces. At the bottom of the stairs, a heavy oak door opened onto a chamber that took my breath away. The room stretched far beyond what should have been possible given the lodge's footprint above. Stone shelves lined the walls filled with leather-bound journals, rolled documents, and artifacts that seemed to span centuries. At the center of the chamber stood a massive table carved from a single piece of black stone, its surface covered with maps, blueprints, and what appeared to be governmental documents bearing official seals. I started with the journals, selecting one at random from a shelf marked 1923-1945. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, but the contents were anything but quaint. The European situation proceeds according to plan. Our associates in Berlin understand their role, though they believe themselves to be serving the fatherland rather than the ancient ones. The sacrifice of the lesser peoples will provide the spiritual energy necessary for the next phase of the great work. Another journal, this one more recent, Operation Mockingbird, exceeds all expectations. The media outlets respond to our guidance without question, believing they serve journalistic integrity while actually perpetuating the narratives required for population control. The sleeping masses accept whatever reality we provide. But it was the documents on the central table that truly shattered my understanding of how the world worked. Blueprints for the USA Patriot Act dated 6 months before September 11, 2001. Battle plans for the invasion of Iraq, complete with fabricated intelligence reports about weapons of mass destruction. Early drafts of social media algorithms designed not to connect people, but to divide them into manageable, controllable factions. And newer documents that made my blood run cold. plans for a global pandemic response that prioritize control over public health, blueprints for digital currency systems that would eliminate financial privacy entirely, population reduction strategies disguised as environmental initiatives. The most disturbing document was a roster of participants going back to the 1870s when the Bohemian Club was first founded. Names I recognized from history textbooks, titans of the Gilded Age who'd shaped America's industrial development, but also names that shouldn't have been there. Figures from much earlier periods, some dating back centuries. Either the record-keeping was fantastically inaccurate, or some of these participants weren't entirely human. At the bottom of the most recent page, a note in fresh handwriting. E. Granger, journalist. Witnessed Inner Circle ceremony July 16, 2023. Asset or liability. Recommend termination if no compliance by dawn July 18th. They knew exactly who I was, had known from the moment I'd walked through their gates. The anonymous email, the forged pass, the convenient access codes, it had all been an elaborate test, and I was apparently failing. A motion sensor somewhere in the chamber beeped softly. Red lights began flashing along the walls. In the distance, I could hear the sound of heavy footsteps descending the stone stairs. I grabbed as many documents as I could carry, stuffed them into my jacket, and looked for another way out. But there was only one exit, and it was about to be filled with very unfriendly people. The footsteps were getting closer. Voices echoed down the stairwell, professional, clipped, the kind of tactical communication used by military operators. But then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in hellish red, and in that brief moment of darkness, I heard something that shouldn't have been possible, a voice speaking directly into my mind, words that bypassed my ears entirely. Run, little journalist, run and tell the world what you've seen, but know that the telling will be your doom. And the world's salvation requires far greater sacrifices than one man's life. When the emergency light stabilized, a section of the stone wall had opened, revealing a narrow tunnel that led deeper into the earth. I didn't hesitate. Whatever entity had just spoken to me, whether it was one of the ancient ones or something else entirely, it was offering me a chance to escape. I took it. The tunnel system beneath the grove was extensive and clearly ancient. Carved passages connected natural caves, creating a network that probably extended for miles underground. The walls were covered with symbols similar to those I'd seen during the Inner Circle ceremony, but these were older, deeper, worn smooth by centuries of whatever had moved through these spaces. I followed the main passage for what felt like hours, guided by phosphorescent moss that provided just enough light to avoid the worst obstacles. Behind me, I could hear sounds of pursuit, voices, flashlight beams, the occasional echo of radio communication. But the sounds were growing fainter, suggesting that my pursuers either couldn't find the tunnel entrance or were reluctant to follow me into the deep places beneath the forest. Eventually, the passage began to slope upward. Fresh air carried the scent of rain and growing things. A natural opening concealed by hanging vines led out into the forest several miles from the main grove compound. I emerged to find the sky filled with storm clouds. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first fat raindrops were beginning to fall. Perfect cover for an escape if I could make it to my car before the Grove security forces expanded their search perimeter. But as I made my way through the forest, I realized I wasn't alone. Figures moved between the trees. Not the tactical teams I'd expected, but something far stranger. They wore the bone-white owl masks from the inner circle ceremony, but their movements were wrong, too fluid, too precise. And their eyes glowed with a faint bioluminescence that had nothing to do with reflected light. "The journalist sees too much," one of them said, the words somehow audible despite the increasing thunder. "The ancient ones are displeased." "But the compact must be honored," another replied. "He was brought here for a purpose. Let him carry the message to the outer world. Let them know what awaits." I ran. Behind me, inhuman laughter echoed through the forest. Not pursuit exactly, but something far more unsettling. The sound of predators who were confident their prey could never truly escape. I reached my rental car as the storm broke in earnest. Rain pounded the windshield as I drove through the night, taking back roads and avoiding the main highways. In my jacket pocket, the stolen documents felt like they were burning against my chest, but I'd made it out. I had evidence. I had proof of the conspiracy that shaped world events from the shadows of a California forest, or so I thought. I uploaded everything to an offshore server farm in Iceland. Documents, audio recordings, photographs, detailed notes of everything I'd witnessed. Multiple backup copies distributed through anonymous networks protected by military-grade encryption. Within 6 hours, every file had been corrupted or deleted. My apartment was ransacked while I was at an internet cafe uploading the files. Nothing obviously stolen, but every electronic device had been confiscated or destroyed. My laptop, phone, backup drives, even the digital camera I'd left in a drawer, all gone. The mainstream media ignored my story completely. Alternative news sites that initially showed interest suddenly went silent. Forum posts about the Grove were deleted within minutes of being posted. It was as if the entire internet had been scrubbed of any reference to what I discovered. But the worst part was the dreams. Every night since my escape, I've been visited by visions of the Ancient Ones, vast tentacled entities that exist in spaces between dimensions, feeding on human suffering and preparing for some cosmic transformation that will remake reality according to their twisted desires. They show me glimpses of the future they're working to create. Cities drowned beneath black oceans, skies filled with screaming winds, populations reduced to cattle serving inhuman masters. And they whisper that I'm not a hero or a journalist or even a victim. I'm a messenger. They wanted someone to witness their ceremony, to understand the scope of their power, to carry word of their inevitable victory to the outside world, not to warn humanity. Warnings imply the possibility of resistance, but to spread the despair that will make their final conquest easier. Every word I write, every person I tell, every attempt to expose the truth only serves their greater purpose. The corruption of hope, the murder of faith in human institutions, the slow transformation of free people into willing slaves. I'm writing this final entry from a motel room in Reno. I've been driving for 3 days, never staying in one place for more than a few hours, but I know it doesn't matter. They're not hunting me because they don't need to. I'm already serving their purpose just by existing, just by remembering what I saw in the Grove. The cremation of care wasn't just a ritual, it was a recruitment ceremony, and I wasn't an infiltrator, I was an initiate. Tonight I'll drive east toward the desert. Maybe I'll find some way to break the cycle, to turn their own trap against them. Or maybe I'll just disappear into the wasteland and let the truth die with me. But if you're reading this, if somehow these words have reached you despite all their efforts to control the flow of information, then remember this. They call it the cremation of care, but what they really burn is conscience. And when the fires die down, the world grows a little colder, a little darker, a little more ready for the ancient ones to reclaim what they consider their rightful dominion. The fire in the grove never really goes out. It just spreads, invisible and inexorable, consuming everything human until only the shadows remain. And in those shadows, something very old and very hungry is waiting to be born.